In the harsh deserts of 1878 America, one cowboy made a choice that changed everything. Asterisk, he saved an Apache woman's life, crossed forbidden land, and defied destiny itself. Asterisk, but some rescues come with a price. This is the story of a love that couldn't survive the world it was born in. Watch till the end. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now the sun was sinking low over the Arizona Territory in 1878, painting the desert in shades of fire and dust. Ethan Cole rode alone, his horse tired but steady, boots cracked, hat pulled low against the wind. He was a cowboy shaped by silence, a man who spoke little and carried more memories than supplies. The land stretched endlessly before him, canyons, dry rivers, and danger hidden in stillness. Stories of Apache lands echoed in every saloon he passed, warnings filled with fear. Yet Ethan felt no hatred, only curiosity and respect for a land that belonged to no man. Asterisk, as evening approached, a sharp cry cut through the desert air. Ethan slowed his horse, listening closely. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't the wind. It was human, pain-filled and desperate. Instinct pulled him off the trail and toward the rocky cliffs nearby. His hand rested on his revolver, not eager for violence but prepared for it. Every step closer made his heart beat louder. In these lands, a single wrong move could mean death. Still, he pressed on, guided by a voice that refused to fade into the desert. Asterisk, behind a cluster of broken rocks, Ethan found the source. A young Apache woman lay trapped beneath a fallen horse, its leg broken, its weight crushing her. Blood stained the sand near her arm, yet her eyes burned with fierce resistance, not fear. She tried to reach for a knife but was too weak. Ethan froze for a moment, knowing who she was and what she represented. Helping her meant crossing a line no cowboy was meant to cross, but leaving her meant condemning an innocent soul to death. Asterisk, slowly, Ethan raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. He spoke calmly, though he knew she might not understand his words. The woman watched him closely, ready to fight if she had to. Using all his strength, Ethan pushed the horse just enough to free her leg. Pain forced a cry from her lips, but she stayed conscious. Before either could move, gunfire erupted. Outlaws, 3 of them, emerged from the ridge, laughing cruelly. They had caused the chaos, and now they had returned to finish it. Asterisk, Ethan reacted without hesitation. He pulled his revolver and fired with deadly accuracy. The desert echoed with shots and screams. 2 men fell instantly. The third fled into the rocks. Silence returned, heavy and unsettling. Ethan turned back to the woman, his heart pounding. He expected hatred or fear in her eyes, but instead found confusion mixed with gratitude. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, yet carried the weight of an entire people's history in her presence. Asterisk, he carried her toward a hidden spring he knew of, away from open land. Along the way, she drifted in and out of consciousness. Ethan tore strips from his shirt to bandage her wounds. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. She told him her name was Nayeli. He repeated it quietly, as if testing a sacred word. In that moment, the world felt smaller, no longer divided by tribes or borders, only by the thin line between life and death. Asterisk, as night fell, Ethan made a small fire, careful to keep it low. Nayeli watched him closely, still unsure if trust was wise. He offered her water, then food. After a long pause, she accepted. The firelight revealed her strength, the scars of survival etched into her skin. Ethan realized she was not just beautiful, she was resilient, unbroken by a harsh world. He felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, something dangerous. He reminded himself he was just helping her heal, nothing more. Asterisk, in the distance, drums echoed faintly. Apache scouts, searching. Ethan knew they would come soon. When they did, he stood aside, hands visible, ready to face whatever judgment awaited him. Warriors appeared silently, weapons drawn. Nayeli spoke quickly in her language, pointing at Ethan, telling them what he had done. The tension eased, but suspicion remained. One wrong word could end him. Still, he stood firm, meeting their eyes without challenge or fear. Asterisk, the tribe allowed Ethan to remain nearby, but not within their camp. He stayed close enough to help, far enough to respect their laws. Each day, Nayeli grew stronger. Each day, their silent bond deepened. They spoke little, yet understood much. Ethan knew this land, this moment, would change him forever. Saving her life was a choice he would never regret. What he didn't yet understand was that this rescue was only the beginning of a loss far greater than anything he had known before. Get started. The days following Nayeli's recovery moved slowly. As if time itself hesitated in the Apache lands, Ethan remained on the edge of the camp, never invited inside, never forced away. He respected the distance, knowing trust was earned through patience, not words. At dawn, he helped gather water or repaired broken tack, careful not to interfere with tribal customs. At dusk, he sat alone, watching the firelight flicker across distant faces. The desert wind carried quiet conversations and laughter, sounds that reminded him he was a guest in a world older than his own. Asterisk, Nayeli often visited him at the boundary where camp met open land. Their conversations were simple, built from shared gestures and slowly learned words. She told him of her people, of sacred mountains and spirits that walked with the living. Ethan spoke of long cattle drives, empty nights, and a life shaped by loss. With each exchange, the space between them narrowed. Yet both understood the truth. They never spoke aloud. His world and hers were separated by more than language. Still, the heart is stubborn, and neither could stop it from choosing. Trouble arrived with the sound of hooves and flags in the distance. The U.S. Army had entered the region, driven by fear and hunger for control. Their presence tightened the air like a drawn wire. Apache warriors prepared for defense, and suspicion fell heavily on Ethan. Some believed he was a scout or a spy, a man who had earned trust to his. Ethan sensed the shift and kept his distance, unwilling to become the spark that ignited bloodshed. He knew his presence now carried danger rather than comfort. One evening, Nayeli approached him with worry etched across her face. She told him the elders had spoken. Outsiders brought ruin, even those with kind hearts. If Ethan stayed, the soldiers would follow. If the soldiers followed, lives would be lost. Her voice trembled as she spoke, torn between duty and feeling. Ethan listened in silence, knowing the words were true. Love did not change the reality of the world. Sometimes, it demanded sacrifice greater than staying. It demanded leaving. That night, Ethan packed his saddle quietly. He left behind anything that might draw attention, taking only what was necessary to survive. Before dawn, Nayeli came to him one last time. She placed a small beaded charm in his hand, crafted in her tribe's colors. It was a symbol of protection, memory, and the path between spirits. She told him he would always be part of her story, even if their paths never crossed again. Ethan closed his fingers around the charm, unable to speak. As the sun rose, Ethan mounted his horse. He wanted to look back, to take one final image of her face and carry it into every empty mile ahead. But he knew if he did, he would never leave. He tipped his hat instead, a silent farewell, heavy with meaning. The sound of hooves faded into the open desert, carrying him away from the only place that had felt like home in years. Behind him, Nayeli stood still, watching until the dust settled. Ethan rode for days, haunted by the quiet. Every campfire reminded him of shared glances and unspoken promises. The charm remained around his neck, a constant reminder of what he had saved and what he had lost. In towns, he heard stories of rising conflict, of battles that would reshape the West. He never spoke of the Apache woman or the land he left behind. Some truths were too sacred for careless tongues. Years passed, carving lines into Ethan's face and silver into his hair. He became a legend in small towns, a lone cowboy with a distant gaze and steady hand. Yet no victory, no fortune, ever filled the space Nayeli left behind. Love had touched him once, deeply and briefly, then vanished like rain in the desert. He understood now that some people are not meant to be kept, only remembered. Far away, Nayeli often looked toward the horizon at sunset, where the sky burned red and gold. She wore the memory of Ethan like a quiet song in her heart. Though their lives moved in separate directions, the bond they shared never truly faded. He had saved her life, but she had changed his soul. And in the vast history of the American West, their story lived on, not in books or songs, but in the silence between two worlds that once dared to love.